thank you all so much for coming out, especially in the middle of the day. We know everybody's super busy, but this is a huge opportunity. And I will go ahead and pass it on to Mark for a sec.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. You guys probably know me already, but I'm Mark. I graduated from Berklee this summer, and I work at the Office of Global Enrollment Initiatives at Berklee now. Really excited to be back on campus and running events like these again. Um, just a little bit of background on Global Enrollment Initiatives. Our department explores, develops, and manages partnerships, programs, and learning experiences around the world. So some of you might have been to Berklee in Santo Domingo or Berklee in Puerto Rico. That's the kind of thing that we do. We're really excited to partner up with Video Game Music Club and also Berklee Motion Picture Orchestra to bring award-winning composer and arranger Chris Opperman as today's guest speaker. Chris, a Berklee alum, has worked on many video game music performances, including Distant Worlds, music from Final Fantasy, Undertale, and also the upcoming Genshin concert at Boston Symphony Hall next month. Um, Berklee Motion Picture Orchestra will actually be hosting Chris again next month for an orchestral reading session. So if you're interested in hearing your work performed live and in receiving feedback from Chris, stick around afterwards. I'll have a couple of words about that. So yeah, really looking forward to that. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Austin, and also please welcome Chris Opperman to the stage.
Thank you very much.
Chris, thank you so much for coming. This is a huge opportunity for the students, and we just want you to know that we are so happy to have you here. Super excited. If you want, would you like to just introduce yourself a little bit more, talk about maybe some before Berklee, maybe, right after Berklee, just your overall career, your path?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank Berklee for having me here today. I also want to thank the Video Game Music Club and the Berklee Motion Picture Orchestra for the event next month, and also Global Initiatives for having me here. Thank you all very, very much, and thank you for coming to this cool event. So my name is Dr. Chris Opperman. I was an undergraduate at Berklee. My major was music business management with an entrepreneurship track, but I also took all my electives in composing and arranging, because Berklee is a really good place to get a well-rounded musical education. After Berklee, I went to Los Angeles, when I was at Berklee, I started my record label. So I put my first album out during my sophomore year. It was called Oppie Music Volume 1, Purple Crayon. And it had a song called Ain't Got No Beef about going to Taco Bell, and they didn't have any beef. And I was real upset about it, so I wrote a song about it. And then I moved to Los Angeles. I worked with Mike Keneally from Frank Zappa's band on his album Dancing, which charted on the Billboard Top 200. And I started working at Universal Music Publishing Group. I worked in publishing for about 4 years, and then I went on tour with a guitarist you might have heard of named Steve Vai. So he had some orchestra concerts, and I wrote the orchestrations for songs like For the Love of God, and performed with the Metropole Orchestra in Holland for those premiere concerts. And then I came back and I went on tour with El Shankar and Zakir Hussain, and we did an Indian classical music tour. I played keyboards in that tour. And then I went to work for GSO Business Management, where I worked for a lot of platinum selling and music icons, those kind of people. And then I got my doctorate in music composition, and now I'm working my own company called Opera Music Services, where I have two primary businesses. One is I do music business consulting for like Rock and Roll Hall of Fame acts mostly, and producers, and then I do arranging for these video game music tours and for the Beach Boys and other groups like that.
Yeah. So thank you. And again, this is like a huge opportunity for us as students. And I feel like personally, something that comes up a lot of students is not really knowing like what it looks like on the other side when you're actually in the room. So like what skills, and specifically musical skills, would you say you're relying on the most now that you're actually doing it every day?
Counterpoint is really important. I mean, there are a lot of arrangers, but if you want to get like top tier gigs, you have to have something that other arrangers don't have. And so my strong foundations, both in counterpoint and also in the study of many different genres and styles of music, I think are two things that set me apart from a lot of other arrangers.
Yeah, it definitely seems like from doing our research, like you have such a wide, broad like skill set and like really huge appreciation and love for all these different styles. Out of curiosity, like, do you approach gigs differently depending on like doing something for Steve Vai versus doing something for Distant Worlds? Like, what is the approach?
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you work for Steve Vai, his primary interests are in virtuosic expression. So he wants to have the music be, as expressive and impressive and big as possible. I'm not saying that Distant Worlds, I'll get there in a second. But the goal for Distant Worlds is this is a worldwide touring production where we hire the orchestras in every single city. So those scores have to be clean in the sense that I need to be able to expect, a professional orchestra to pick it up in a rehearsal or two. Whereas the Steve Vai concert, I get 2 weeks of rehearsal, so that does affect like the how you would go about arranging certain things.
Right.
I don't mean in terms of quality; I mean in terms of like practicality.
Definitely.
And also the music's very different. Steve has a million notes.
What has been your favorite piece to arrange so far, or maybe top three?
Top three. Well, for the love of God, that piece is definitely really up there. So the Undertale arrangements I did really hold close to my heart. There's one, I think it's called Another Medium. And I got up at like 3 in the morning and I rocked it out by 6. I had it done. But I was like, this is great. I like this a lot. And then I have a piece called The Porpentine on my album, The Lion Heart. It's for full orchestra plus rock ensemble. And I really had a good time putting that together. As a producer, that was, we recorded every instrument individually so that I could have maniacal control over the mix. I think it came out really great. So, but I mean, I go on and on and on with that. I love everything I do.
100%. That's awesome. It's kind of stepping back from all the amazing work that you do. Like, what does your routine look like? Like, what is your time management like?
What is a routine and what is time management?
I guess that's yeah, very fair. Are you kind of in like all hours of the day? It seems, or like
yeah, I'm not. When I was younger, in my 20s, I would work routinely 18 to 20 hours a day. But now that I'm older and I have children, they enforce the sleep schedule. Right. But I think that you should be working. And I know a lot of people might disagree with me, but if you want to get ahead, you have to work harder than the people you're trying to get ahead of, right?
Sure. In your experience, what were some of the steps that really helped like propel you to be able to do that work, and especially like right after school? Moving and like experiencing this like brand new different shift. Like
this is going to sound like a great ad for Berklee, and it's 100% true. Berklee will prepare you to go wherever it is that you want to go. You want to go to Nashville, you want to go to LA, you want to go to New York, you want to go to Barcelona. The Berklee Career Center will help you get there. Absolutely, 100%.
Shout out Berklee. Thank you so much, Berklee College of Music.
That'll be $500, please.
Yeah. Jumping back, I guess, into obviously as the Video Game Music Club, we're super, super interested in all the video game music work that you do. We were kind of wondering, like, what's it like to take something that a lot of times, especially in musical systems and gameplay that are as complex as a Final Fantasy, what's it like to take like music from like a very non-linear like playstyle and composition, and taking it and orchestrating it and arranging it into a very linear like concert form, and like, how much material do you get from the original composers? Who are you working with? All that.
So the composers, how do I want to put this? It depends on the piece, right? So Distant Worlds has a much more complicated infrastructure and hierarchy. So sometimes the composers will literally send us the arrangement and be like, this is what we're doing. And then other times, they might say, like, well, you can work on this part, or, you know what I mean? So it's really hard to say, like, what the procedure is fully. Right. The chamber music ensemble that's playing tomorrow at Jordan Hall, we get approval from Square Enix, it's the arrangement, and the composers, and then that's all we get. So we transcribe the piece from the original master recording, and then we create the arrangement from there. But it's all done from scratch in that ensemble.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. What is your favorite ensemble, or like what what instrumentations do you really feel drawn to like writing for?
When I did Undertale, one thing that was interesting to me was that because I did it all so fast. I was really like, I wonder what the bassoon and French horn will sound like together. So you wind up with all these arrangements that have these French horn bassoon duets, because that's what I was thinking about, over those few weeks.
Wow. And yeah, especially in Undertale, which is coming from largely a sound font language, I'm sure translating that to orchestra is really fun. Do you feel like you have more freedom when it's something like that, or?
Yes, I had a lot of freedom with Undertale Live, more than I would with Disney Worlds, but that's to be expected.
Gotcha. So who are you typically working with on a day-to-day as far as collaborating and even just like in meetings with, getting gigs, that sort of thing?
The conductors, Arnie Roth and Eric Roth, are the ones that I talk to the most.
Gotcha. I know in certain, especially like orchestral and symphonic worlds, like rehearsal time very, very limited.
Very expensive.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of time and do you get a lot of insight into that, or is it more like write it and send it and like hope for the best?
Well, I never hope for the best, right? The whole game is won in pre-production. That's what we always talk about, right? If my scores are really clear and there are no notation mistakes, and I want to present everything. Well, let me put it this way: I've written a lot of music in my life that people would consider like difficult, complicated, like those kind of adjectives. But I always present them notationally in the cleanest possible way. Right, so I could have a rhythm. It's like right. So you're thinking like right, and you're like, oh my gosh, what is he counting, right? But then the tempo of the thing itself will be like right, because the people reading it, right. A lot of time, I think composers try to show off like how good they are at music theory, and they write their music that way. But I like to write music the way the musicians are going to actually play it. Right, so if I have this highly syncopated, highly irregular meter, there's no point in having the conductor go. That's pointless. The musicians will not look at the music. They don't look at the conductor. Look at the music. What's happening, right? But when I notate in 4/4, I notate in 2/4. I get this like hip groove, right? Because you're all trained in ear training to read very specific sets of syncopations, and I can just chain them, and then you can just read it. And then I get the result that I want instead of trying to show off how cool I am at my meters. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 100%.
But there are other times where you just have to. Like if it's going to last for a while, like if I'm going to sit in 7/8 for a while, then I'll sit in 7/8.
Definitely. You talk about groove. I mean, a lot of these concerts that you're doing, it seems to be like this like really, really amazing rock, some world music, some orchestra. Like, what's your favorite part of putting all of that together? And like how do you find it best to like bring out like, a strong soaring melody in this like very dense background that's like lots of groove going on, lots of rhythms?
That's a great question. Octave doubling is a great way to bring out a melody.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if I really want to push it, I'll put in like 3 or 4 octaves, and then it doesn't matter what's in the background. I mean, it matters in the background, but it doesn't matter in the sense that your ear is going to hear the foreground that you want. You want to think about music compositionally kind of 3-dimensionally. So you have the foreground melody, the top stuff, and then you have the kind of like background secondary parts, and then you have the underlying chordal structure or the structure of the piece, right? And you want to think about how these like small, middle, and large scale considerations will make the piece grow as it goes on, right? So you have melody, harmony, rhythm. If you have text or singing, you have text, and timbre, right? And then you have growth. And what you want to do is you want to switch around what the thing you're focused on is as the piece goes on to keep the piece always renewing itself, right? So in the case of the video game music, if I have a video game piece and it has an A section, let's say, and the A section repeats, when I repeat the A section, I'm not going to repeat it exactly because I want the audience, even if it's subtle, even if it's like I just change an instrument or two, right? And so that the audience feels like the piece is renewing itself at all times, right? So it's kind of like a mantra of non-repetition, but applied to the things that are typically repetitive.
Definitely. One of my favorite things about orchestration and arranging is kind of this balance between like the formulaic and like detail-driven side, and then also like the color and the creative. What would you say, like, as far as like, I guess like ratio, like how often are you thinking I want this color versus how often are you thinking like I need this many, strings to make sure that it cuts through when the brass is going, that sort of thing?
I honestly I kind of go moment by moment. I don't think of it in terms of like I did X, therefore Y. I think in terms of like I've had this moment. Now, what is this next moment going to be?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Um, so when you're working, so I think one of the best parts of Berkeley is the ability to come in and like have something as your major, and then do something completely different.
My
All on
major
the
is a
side.
punchline at parties.
Right. Right. Um, how do you kind of like navigate, like as someone who, like you said, music business was your
Correct.
yeah, with entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that has helped you out? Do you think that that has like held you back at all? I mean, I'm sure it hasn't held you back that much.
I really like not being poor. I know a lot of people have this thing about like, I'm going to be a poor starting musician. It's not fun. You're sitting on your couch going like, do I have 39 cents to get this McDonald's hamburger tonight? Not great. You're not writing a lot of music then, right? So it's a lot better to have a job and then do that job and then write music after your job's done.
Yeah, how do you kind of navigate like being like, I want this skill, right? Like I have these goals, and then like, oh, so I could do this, or I could do this, or I could take this class, or I could do this major. Because I mean, Berklee is kind of only growing and growing like every year.
It's so cool.
Yeah. How did you like make those choices about like, well, I know that I want to do this, so therefore to get to here, I needed to do this. Was it classes for you? Was it projects for you? Was it outside work?
I mean, I still do that. Just today, I was thinking, I was, on the train here, and I was like, what's next? What am I gonna do next? How do I get there? What do I want to do? I mean, that doesn't change as you get older, right? Well, the moment that stops, I would say that would be a concern. I'd be like, okay, am I interested in being stagnant for the rest of my career? Because I'm only 44, and I don't think it sounds like fun, right? Do the same thing year after year after year.
Yeah, definitely. Um, for Berklee students that are maybe struggling with not knowing where they want to go now, for the younger students or for the older students that are like getting ready to transition into something else, what do you think is like the best piece of advice that they can take with them?
You don't know what you need. None of you know what you need right now because you don't know what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? So the best piece of advice I can give you, especially at a place like Berklee where there's so much, is take the ride, right? If you're in a class and you feel like, well, I don't really want to be an arranger. Why am I stuck in arranging too? Man, take the hell out of arranging too. What can I learn today? What can I do? Because you don't know what skills you're going to need. You never know.
Definitely. So you've worked in some like band settings as well, right? Like
Yep.
outside of just orchestra. Do you think like how translatable are some of those skills? Like, do you find yourself thinking in the same way that you would about like guitar doubling as like say like fleshing it out to full orchestra? Like, do you start with sketches or do you just kind of go full out all the way?
I mean, that's a great question. I'm talking about Undertale a lot today, but it's a really good example. My experience playing in bands in an improvisation-based setting, right? So when I had my own bands in Los Angeles, we would do even group improvisations where I would set some kind of parameter, usually a title, and then I would conduct and we'd start playing. And the song didn't exist. Now it is here. We're doing this. We're listening. We're figuring it out. In Undertale, there were some pieces where the ensemble actually wanted to do some improvisational stuff, and then I had to figure out how to notate it in a way that there was enough space for them to really explore the timbres of what I was trying to combine, but where I wasn't dictating every single moment.
Right. And I would assume with Undertale, where you have tracks that are, a lot shorter than a concert arrangement has to be, it might be a little difficult to like really like flesh out a lot of that material. What are some of do you have any like strategies for like pulling out material and like giving new birth to like repeated ideas? Like,
Well, some arrangers have a philosophy where they want to add original material to the music to make it longer, to extend it. I'm not going to judge that as a strategy, but that's not the strategy that I employ. So I will take a more literal stance of what's there and then try to augment it through orchestration and not through inventing new material.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When it comes to like reinventing, I mean, do you get like input? Like, how often nowadays, considering you're so busy, do you still get to like listen, do score study, like really talk to people and like get new ideas on top of that?
It's pretty rare these days that I get to do like a full score study, but I try to take advantage of opportunities. Today on the train here, I listened to new music by Caroline Shaw, Annika Sokolovsky, I hope I pronounced her name right, and some other composers, Louis Andreessen, and just trying to, I don't really need to study scores anymore because I can hear it, right? When I put the music on, I just see the score in my head. You know what I mean? I know what the intervals are. I can get a sense of what's going on. But, given the opportunity, I do try to explore new music. The new Nickel Creek album is really good. It has a lot of cool vocal harmonies. They do this kind of chordal bends as a group that are really interesting. But I do try to keep things fresh.
Yeah. Do you have any, I guess on the other side, do you have any foundational either pieces for orchestration or maybe full-on albums that you feel yourself maybe not directly going back to, but are always there in your musical output?
There's an album by Carla Bley called Escalator Over the Hill. And the first time I heard it, I was in the Berklee 5-week performance program. The librarian sat me down and said, "You should hear this." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
I mean, they got these huge brass chords. This trombone comes in. It's threatening. The tenor sax player, Gato Barbieri, he plays this most snarling. No one has touched this solo since. I tell you, the solo in the Hotel Overture is the most shriekingly evil sax solo you've ever heard in your life. And no one has been able to touch it ever. So stuff like that I think about a lot. When I met Carla Bley, she told me that, some composers need dissonance in their lives, and she needs a lot of dissonance in her life.
Super interesting. So for these modern orchestration, I feel especially as students, in an academic setting, we tend to, really focus on older forms and older instrumentation study, right? And not really maybe being as up to date as we want to as students ourselves versus what we're getting from the class sometimes. I know that's something that I run into.
I would bring that up to your professor and ask them to do more modern stuff.
What are some of your favorite modern say last 20 years, not even last 50?
I mean, Anna Klein wrote this piece called Dance. It's a cello and orchestra suite, and I'm just wow. Wow. No, there's just some great pieces out there, and they're all worth exploring. You can follow the Pulitzer Prize. You can follow those albums. You can follow the Grauemeyer. Am I pronouncing that right, Bree? She's giggling. I guess I got it right. You can follow that award and hear a lot of great pieces. You can look at, the Boston Globe does some new music reviews and stuff. You can check those out. But it's everywhere. There's a ton of great, interesting composers doing lots of great, interesting things. I'm one of thousands of people doing cool stuff right now.
Yeah. So taking us into I guess your world a bit more, what does it look like for you to sit down and write? It seems maybe you work super, super fast.
I have to.
Yeah. I'm sure the pace is very, very, very quick. But what do you employ as a way to get it done and also keep yourself motivated and grounded in a way where you can consistently have this massive output?
Well, one trick is that I work on several pieces at the same time, right? So you get stuck. You guys ever got stuck working on something? Well, I get stuck working on stuff. When I get stuck, I work on the next piece. And then sometimes I'll learn something from that piece. I'll be oh, I solved this problem this way in this piece. I'm going to go back to the other piece and solve it the same way.
Taking a break from music by doing more music?
That's correct. Take a break from music, do more music. I will never tell you to do less music. I'll never cut my mouth. I'll be you know what? You should don't take a break. You get back to work. You write something new.
What do you find drives your process the most? I know you brought up counterpoint, but are you typically thinking melodically driven, or are there pieces where it's more about texture and rhythm, or what's kind of the forefront at all times when it comes to just laying it out?
If I have to pick something for all times, then I'm going to pick the melody, right? No matter what. It could be a weird melody, but you got to hang your hat on a melody. You guys, the audience remembers. A lot of people make the mistake of not thinking about the audience listening to the song,
How would you recommend developing that kind of speed in order to execute on these huge arrangements? I know for a lot of us, we're getting into that for the very first time. It's super daunting. We haven't done it before. Do you do any exercises? Did you do any exercises previously maybe that help speed up your workflow?
I went through the real book and arranged all the songs in it. Right? These are skills you develop. It's not a magic I'm not a magician, right? Like I practice and work and then improve and then get faster. It's just like your instrument. Like if I want to be a genius piano player, then I'm probably playing piano a lot. It's the same thing. Exercise your mind.
Yeah. How much do you get to like play around in your, as far as like just experimenting, just like throwing ideas out, or is it mostly like I know that like this is gonna work and basically, or I have like this exact like thing in my head, so I'm just writing it out and drafting it out.
That's why it's like I think this is gonna work. I mean, I don't want to be in a point where I'm just not trying anything new at all. So I just try to do like even subtle little things that are different.
Right. And about like developing the like trust in yourself that like it'll come out in a way that's like authentic to you and effective.
Yeah, I have enough experience now that I can trust that voice. When I was younger, it took a lot longer. So, for instance, the For Love of God arrangement for Steve Vai, I spent the whole weekend on just the woodwinds in the beginning. Because I was like, okay, the bassoon, okay, I'm going to play this note, they're going to play this note, I'm playing a 9 here, I'm going to do a sharp 11 here, I'm going to do a 13, this one, this one, you know what I mean? But experimenting, right? But now, like, it's faster because I can conjure that stuff at will now, whereas I couldn't when I was younger.
Right. So I know you took some time, I believe, you took some time like right after school and then eventually came back to do, well, not to Berklee, but just to do grad studies in general.
Right.
Was that like a big step for you, or did it feel just like the next like natural thing? Would you recommend that to other people?
Oh, man, recommending grad school. I don't know if I'd do that, go that far. But, I felt like I had, how do I want to say this? By the time I got to that point in my life in Los Angeles, like I played on 2 Grammy-nominated songs, and I had this like big job, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do this forever. I want to do something different. I want to learn new things. So I went back to school and learned new things, and then used that in what I'm doing. But I just, I'm not very, I don't want to sit still,
Did that feel like a big like jump from like, like I'm doing it, but actually now I want to change? Because I know like that happens to people at Berklee all the time. That happened to me like my first and second year was like, I'm going to do this. Nope. Like that sort of thing. And
I mean, spending a year in the library is a great idea. Everyone should do it. Spending 10 years in the library is a great idea. Everyone should do it. Right? There's just so much. There's so much the whole history of music. You can hear some 14th century piece that makes you kind of recontextualize. Like some of the pieces I'm really fascinated by are actually the proto-contrapuntal pieces, where you have some semblance of counterpoint developed, but it hasn't been encoded and embalmed into these like, rules.
yeah.
So you get this kind of freewheeling stuff, and you're like, wow, that's hot. That's like a hot interval,
Yeah, 100%. I guess like we're gonna probably open up to open Q&A pretty soon, but if you were looking to, I guess for lack of a better word, mold the mind of someone that was, coming out of Berklee or like in Berklee, in the thick of it, maybe their head is buried a little bit about like focusing on like classwork. What would you tell them? What would you recommend they work on? What should we all be paying attention to right now?
You should never be home. You should always be doing something. You should be meeting people. Like the whole Final Fantasy gig I eventually got because I showed up to a concert and met Uematsu-san and handed him a CD in 2011.
Wow.
And then over time, they got to know me, and they were like, okay, well, Chris is our guy. So you got to go out and meet people. You got to network. You got to study. Like, you don't have time to, like, sit around and, like, be lame. I don't know.
Great advice. Great words to live by. Thank you so much again. Can we hear it one more time for
You're welcome.
Chris? And yeah, I guess we're just going to open it up to audience questions.
I mean, what I want for all of you is for you all to go out and have an interesting life. And the way to have an interesting life is to explore and try things and do things, even if you were totally convinced you're going to fail really hard. That will teach you something much better than if you don't try.
Yeah. All right. Could we possibly get the house lights up a little bit just so we can see all the, oh, hey, everybody, there are people here. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? I guess I'll just pass this microphone out. Is that good with tech? Does that work? I don't want to. Oh, there's a mic on the side.
Oh, look at that. See,
Bingo.
MP&E in Berklee, man, don't mess around.
All right. Yeah. I mean, any question is like more than welcome, I would assume.
Absolutely.
Anybody can like raise your hand, or you can go to the mic, whatever you're feeling. Raise them high, people.
All right, we'll go you, and you. How about that? There's a microphone there if you want, or you can just talk loud.
Use the mic so that you can be heard on the live stream, please.
Great,
Ooh,
perfect.
good
Please use
call.
the microphone.
Maybe we can.
Please form a singular file line. And if you have questions you don't want to ask in the microphone, I am here, and after the event, you're more than welcome to come and say hi to me and ask me any questions that you want.
So, if you were to choose one experience throughout your whole life, what experience would you say is the most impactful, or what's the word? Crap. Well, it's most impactful and most important. In
The
your
birth of my
career
daughter.
path.
Heavy stuff to start off.
That's how you phrase the question.
but like in your career path as well.
No, my career path, probably the Steve Vai concerts were the most impactful.
One more time.
The Steve Vai Orchestra concerts were very impactful.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I was wondering, what do you think was the hardest arrangement you have ever had to put together?
I'm actually working on one now that's been really hard because there's a prominent vocal line in it, and I don't have a vocalist, so I have to figure out ways to keep it fresh without the timbre of the singing, right? So the accompaniment is built to support this vocal and these lyrics that aren't existing. So I would say that that's the challenge I'm thinking about right now.
Hi, I was wondering, when you get given the set list for one of these video game concerts, how much freedom do you get to play around with the arrangement, or does it have to be as close to the actual track from the game as possible?
Philosophically, I try to keep things as close to the track as possible, because I think that that's what the audience is expecting to hear. But in terms of the set list, I have a lot of control over what the set list is. So that's a place I can experiment. But we have a committee. I'm the only person that decides, but I have a voice in that, and my voice is heard.
Thank you.
Hello. My question has to do with what you mentioned about how you met Uematsu-san in 2011, and then you stayed connected and in touch. And my question is, how does that kind of look like? Because I've gone to networking events before, and meeting people is the easiest part. You just introduce yourself. But how do you stay in touch without it seeming very transactional? I want to be employed, and you clearly have.
I had no imagination that I would possibly be employed by virtue of me not being from Japan. I don't mean that in any kind of mean way. You know what I mean? I just thought it was cool. I was like, wow, I got this cool friend, and I had these people, and they invite me to go backstage, and now I'm at Carnegie Hall hanging out at this cool party. I had no idea that they were planning on hiring me, thinking about hiring me.
Mm-hmm.
That all came as a big surprise to me.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your process for turning around things quickly. You're arranging something, you need to transform it to an extent at least, and you don't really have time to think about ideas. You kind of just have to get it out, but it still has to be good.
Yeah, that's the job.
How do you have a process to help with that, or?
I mean, it just comes from years of experience. The more arranging you do, the more practice you do, the better at it you'll be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So when it comes to making arrangements that include a full orchestra and a band that say has an electric guitar or something, those types of band instruments tend to overpower an orchestra. So how do you work with both to make sure that all the timbres are heard?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was working with the Beach Boys, I worked on a song called "Don't Worry, Baby," and it's this nice, gentle song. And so there was one part where I decided I was going to have this kind of harp glockenspiel duet, where it's kind of a bridge part, and they'll sing, the Beach Boys will sing over the melody. Anyway, at Carnegie Hall, John Stamos came from the Full House, the show. I don't know, he was probably too young. But he came, and then he just crashed his drum set through the whole thing. Just bam, bam. It was so loud. There was zero chance you were going to hear this thing. And I'll tell you, I loved it. I laughed so hard. I was like, this is awesome. I love this.
Okay. but how did you deal with that, or did you just let it happen?
Showbiz, man, let it happen. You know, que sera, sera.
In the live setting, it's kind of like once it's out of your hands, it's gone.
Yeah, don't get upset about stuff. You know, once it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands.
In this live performance setting, but in kind of a hybrid scenario, are you ever thinking about like mix as far as like miking or like how it's going to sound on the speakers, or are you more just thinking like orchestration, like, you know, if this
I
were a
do
concert
think
hall?
both, because a lot of the things also get recorded. And one of the things that I really kind of enjoy is hearing the difference between the performance that you hear live, even with when all the instruments are mic'd and everything, and then the mix you get back when you can really balance the stuff out. So I think they're two different mediums, and you want to try to think of both of them. You want to satisfy both parties. You want to satisfy the musicians who are playing it in the moment, and you also want to satisfy people who are going to hear on headphones when the recording is done.
If you'll allow me to nerd out for a sec.
Please nerd out.
So I write a lot for big band, and sometimes I'll extend that a little bit more. Do you find like writing for like various ensembles has influenced like your overall orchestral writing? Or
100,000%. You are the sum of your experiences. You want to experience all kinds of music. Like you will not have a career if you're sitting around going like, you know, man, Brahms is the man, and like everyone else is just like stupid. You know, like get into some Brahms. Like I hope you get over that video game music stuff and get into Brahms real soon. Like you will not have a career, I promise. It's the fastest way to just like crash your plane. You know.
do you think about like
Brahms?
yeah. How much do you listen to Brahms? Do you think about like, I guess like voicings from like a jazz terminology as far as when it comes to What are some of
100%.
the- what sort of ways does that like influence your like writing for an orchestral ensemble?
Well, the things you learn in arranging too, if you still do it, you're like that's like big band stuff, right? That applies to all the different sections of the orchestra, right? I can write woodwind parts that have that kind of spirit and energy, right? I have the same kind of general considerations about range and timbre, and then I can mix them up, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do. I mean, I would really like Rimsky-Korsakov wrote a really fine book on orchestration, but there's so much out there. There's so much world to explore. You know, one of the worst things I think you could do is take a piece of music and then try to classify it, right? Like, oh, we're going to make this in classical music now, so it has to have these things that make it classical music. You know, like I think you should present the spirit of the original composer, what they want, and kind of represent that.
100%. That feels like a really great place to kind of close off. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to come up to the mic. But if not, I mean, can we hear it one more time for Dr. Chris Opperman, please?
Thank you.
Thank you so much again.
You can always email me. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram and ask me questions. I'm always happy to talk to students. I'm always happy to try to help you how I can. Good luck to all of you. Thank you.
And make sure to, if you don't know anybody in VGMC or if you don't know anybody in BMPTO, please reach out to us. That's not how you spell Berklee Motion Picture Orchestra. That's my bad. There's no T in there. I don't know why I put it in there. BMPO, sign up. We'll have a lot of details coming for our follow-up for next month. And we would love to see you and love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you again, Chris.
Thank you.
We did it, everybody.